but I wanted to talk a little bit about the process of emotional healing. And hi, Ron. Um, and why it can be a little difficult, and what is really important to consider when you're thinking about the process of emotional healing. And part of this came from a comment on the video that I released yesterday about limiting beliefs. And the comment was just how powerful our minds are, and that they can either kind of make us feel good or make us feel bad. And that then the next part was, and we get to choose where we put our energy, which suggests that we get to make a choice whether we want to feel good or we want to feel bad. Are we putting our energy into negative thoughts and feelings? Are we putting our energy into positive thoughts and feelings? That we get to choose that. Well, in theory, there's truth to that. It's one of the reasons why affirmations are such a big thing. However, in reality, in order to make a choice, to actually make a choice, we have to be in our conscious awareness. We have to be in our rational, logical mind. We have to be fully present, right? To make a choice. Are we going to choose this, or are we going to choose this? Particularly if one of those options is something good for you, that would be a healthy option, and you're struggling. So the idea, hi Isabella, the idea that we get to choose is not completely accurate, and I think can be somewhat, or maybe a lot, shaming. Because if it's as simple as choosing, wouldn't we all choose to be happy? Wouldn't we all choose to think positive things about ourselves? So if we're not, then what does that say about us? Well, it doesn't actually say anything, because it's not really true, but that's what we're left with. We're left with, what's wrong with me? I know that practicing affirmations is good. I know that if I just practice self-compassion, even, that will be good. But when we are reacting to something, when we're feeling something, when we're struggling, our conscious awareness is not fully online. Where we are is within our body, and our body is reacting to some sort of experience that has left us feeling not great in some way. And because there's so much familiarity with that within our body, it creates more thoughts that are associated with that feeling in our body. And sometimes we can be aware of that, but much of the time it's happening so quickly and automatically that it takes quite a while before you recognize really what's happening. And so if something happens, and it could be something relatively minor, but you suddenly feel like maybe you said something wrong, maybe you got a question wrong, or maybe you said something that might have upset somebody. Well, in that moment, if we could choose, we would choose to say to ourselves, it's perfectly fine, you've not done anything wrong. For a lot of people, it might even be, well, if they don't like it, then that's their problem. I didn't do anything wrong, which isn't necessarily always healthy either. But if we have access to our conscious thinking, to our rational part of our brain, then we can do that. We can stop that experience and say to ourselves, I'm going to ignore this, or I'm going to do something that's healthy for me. But in those moments, if you feel like you've done something wrong, fear is going to kick in, and there's a good chance shame is going to kick in. So when that happens, either fear or shame, and they're generally somewhat connected, depending on the circumstance, very closely connected. In that moment, and you don't even have to have an awareness, and it's even more problematic when you don't have that awareness in terms of the impact it has. But in that moment, if by a look or it taking a little bit too long for somebody to respond, you're going to internalize that as, oh my God, did I do something wrong? And as soon as that thought comes, even if you're not aware that it's there, your body reacts to that. The shame kicks in, the fear kicks in, you want to run and hide. You're saying to yourself, below your consciousness, you're saying to yourself, oh my God, that was so stupid. Why did I do that? I can't believe I did that. Or right? You know the things that you say to yourself. And all of that is happening just like that. And then when those thoughts happen based on what's happening in your body, it fuels that energy in your body. And that energy increase in your body fuels more thought. It drives you to pull all this so-called evidence that you've held on to prove how wrong you usually are, how many times you've gotten it wrong, how many times you've screwed something up. And again, much of the time, we're not consciously connected to what's happening in all of that. We just notice feeling a lot, but not necessarily completely understanding it. And this is true for so many different types of circumstances, not just if we feel like we've done something wrong. It happens in everyday life. If we're running late for something, we have an idea about what it says about who we are if we're running late, or what might happen if we're running late. And our body responds to that. That creates more thoughts, more confirmation of what you already believe and fear. And it's a horrible vicious cycle. So healing, emotional healing, and any wounding requires emotional healing. Even physical wounding as a child, particularly like abusive physical wounding, not like if you cut yourself or something, unless you were not responded to very well in that moment. But emotional healing, when it comes to interpersonal wounding, is part of the reason that it is such a challenging process, is because it isn't as simple as making a choice. We can read everything that is out there. We can even go to therapy or get coaching. We can take classes and courses and all kinds of stuff, even go to school to be a therapist. We can learn everything that there is to learn, but we're learning it on a very cognitive level. I wish that there was a simple process of moving it from what we know cognitively to changing our physiology, to changing what our core beliefs are. But it doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. The process of getting what we know cognitively internalized into our being, into our physiology, our body, our nervous system, which changes everything else, takes space, it takes time, it takes practice, and it takes support. It takes all of those things. And we need to allow ourselves the spaciousness over time, the patience to continue to practice every day. And some days are easier than others. And most days we need reminders to practice. We need help much of the time in figuring out how do I apply this in this moment? How does this apply to me in this moment? Because if we're trying to take something that applies generally into our experience in that moment, it can be very easy to say, well, it applies to everybody else, but it's not applying to me. It doesn't really apply to me for this, which is one of the ways that we kind of isolate ourselves and hold on to the belief that somehow we're not worthy of healing. But we need that space, we need the patience, and we need practice. And I often talk about practice, and certainly that this is a process, it's a journey. It's not some place that you just set your GPS for and you navigate the quickest route or even the scenic route to. It is a journey. And even like in deeply rooted or cultivating self-compassion, it isn't as simple as just doing the journaling exercises and now suddenly you know how at any given moment to practice self-compassion. No, because when you're in the moments when you most need self-compassion, you're likely you're feeling shame or self-judgment or criticism or fear. So again, your logical mind, your rational mind, is not dictating what's happening. It's your body, because as soon as that shame or judgment or fear kicks in, your body is driving what's happening. Like you'll notice, right? If you have a feeling, if there's an emotion that comes up for you, it's often quite strong. Maybe you don't know exactly what it is, but you know that it's there. And it may not be like an overwhelming sensation, but it's definitely there. But much of the time we don't know what it is. And we try to talk ourselves out of it because it doesn't maybe seem to make sense. But that feeling gives more energy to thoughts. And like I said, then you start searching for so-called evidence or proof of what you are already thinking and believing. So this whole process of emotional healing, it's learning, it's processing, it's experimenting, it's practicing, it's reflecting. And the practice part isn't something we can just make a decision to do. We have to have a conscious awareness that it's a time to practice, that there's something very specific we can practice, and then internalizing in our system, internalizing what that practice has just created for us. Being able to connect to self-compassion, being able to really feel that, or being able to feel in our body a sense of feeling safe. So we have to be really conscious and present with that in order for it to ever begin to shift anything. But it takes time to be able to get there, and it takes practice. So many times we have to practice it for a long period of time and over many times in order for our body to start to trust that that can be real. And as I've thought about creating a new experience. I've thought about it for a long time at different times for different reasons. I've tried to figure out how I could make it work, what it could look like, whether it would be beneficial. So there have been a lot of things I can get my own way sometimes, like we all can. But as I thought about creating this new experience, and I thought about what it would ultimately look like, I felt like that there needed to be a lot of learning. It needed to be continual learning. And as I kind of settled into that, and I thought, it just didn't quite, I was having a hard time with it. I was having a hard time really conceptualizing what that would look like. And I realized part of the reason for that is because it isn't just about learning. Learning is part of it. Learning is important. Learning accurate information is also really important. But it's the practice. It's the practicing, it's the support that really helps internalize and ultimately shift everything. And so this idea that I have, and right now I'm leaning towards returning to wholeness. And I'm calling it that because all of healing, all of emotional healing and trauma healing, as I've said, you've heard me say this many times, it's not about changing who we are. It's not about having to become a different person. It's about connecting to the truth of who you've always been. Connecting, reconnecting to the whole of you. WHOLE. Because no matter what you've experienced, no matter how much you've struggled, no matter how many mistakes you've made, you are whole. But all of that stuff gets in the way of us being able to see it, to believe it, to trust it. Because those core beliefs make us believe that we're not whole, that we're inherently damaged, that we can never truly be okay or lovable, deserving or worthy, or maybe never be enough. But this whole emotional healing process is about returning to the truth of who you've always been. Because who you are is already enough. Who you are has always been enough. And who you are is capable and worthy of so much that we keep ourselves from because we're afraid that we're not worthy. We're afraid that if we try something and it doesn't work, it proves that we're a failure and undeserving. But that's not true. But that core belief is so powerful that the moment that we think about trying something different, that fear kicks in. And then the thoughts follow. Those affirming thoughts of why you are a failure or why you'll never measure up. None of it based in truth. And so the idea of returning to wholeness is creating an opportunity at what I hope is an affordable price point for women to be able to come together in community to learn, but more importantly, to be, to practice, to remember who we all are. No matter what we're struggling with, no matter what experiences we've had, to be together in a space where we can heal. And another really important part of this is that as we come together in community and practice together, that changes how you show up in your life. It changes how you interact with people that are close to you. It changes your level of confidence, and so your ability to share your opinion about things. You release shame so that you can talk about things in a way that feels meaningful to you without feeling the need to hide. And as you do all of that, it changes the people around you. So this is about community, but it's also about a movement of women coming together and talking about the things that we often fear talking about. Even acknowledging that we struggle, so that all of us can feel a sense of freedom no matter what we're struggling with, no matter what we've experienced. Feeling a sense of freedom because we realize that there is no shame that we deserve to hold on to, that we can show up without a mask on. And not only that we can, but how amazing it feels. And that is my hope for returning to wholeness. So, if returning to wholeness, if being a part of this community feels interesting, intriguing, exciting, if you feel drawn to it in any way, let me know in the comments. And if you haven't, and I put the link in the description of this video, if you haven't already signed up on my website to be on my email list, make sure you do so, because the people on my email list will have first access to joining the community when it opens. And this first opening will be for a short period of time. And the price point that I'm opening at right now, or when it opens, will be only for this cohort. So after the probably 5 days or so that it's open, it's going to close, and it won't reopen again for at least 3 months. And when I open it the next time, it will be at a higher price point. So make sure you sign up for my email list if you haven't. The website is in the description. It's courageousjourneys.com. You'll also get a little ebook, tiny little ebook on using affirmations in a way that can actually help shift something. So it's not just doing affirmations, it's using affirmations in a way that can help shift some of that energy.